Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Exploring Family Business with Mazars. I'm your host, Natalie Wright, and on this week's episode we're looking at sustainability and managing growth, which featured as the second highest concern for UK family business owners in our 2019 Family Business Survey. I've also included a link to the survey in the show notes. Joining me today to explore the subject are three members of the Smiths of Derby team, a 164-year-old family business based in Derbyshire. We have Bob Betts, the managing director of the business, Heather Whitworth, a director of the group and a member of the fifth generation, and Nick Whitworth, a sixth generation family member. We also have Alan Frost, who joined me on last week's episode. Alan is the director from the Mazars consulting team, who specialises in working with family businesses, supporting them as they adapt and pivot their business model to focus on long-term growth. Thank you all for joining us today. So earlier this year, I was introduced to Smiths of Derby when I reviewed their submission as part of the judging panel for the National Family Business Awards. I was really impressed with how the business has managed to create a union of family and non-family members working in collaboration towards a shared vision, and how this has helped them to continue to grow and build a sustainable business which honours their values and culture. Bob, Heather and Nick, could you tell our listeners more about your business and the roles that you each have? Bob, if we can start with you first.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, I'm Bob Betts. I'm the Managing Director of Smiths of Derby Limited, and as you said, 164 years young. So it's great to be leading a successful business and a family business. Working as one team, it's great to be able to explore and discuss some of that today, because we're usually just engrossed in the day-to-day operating side of the business. So it's a pleasure to be exploring that with you today. And I'll hand over quickly the intro to Heather and Nick.
Thanks very much. My name is Heather Whitworth. I'm fifth generation family member and director of Group and Limited. I've been involved with the company since school, not always full time, but always with some kind of a presence. I don't have a fixed role within the company, but in recent years, I've been involved in building and place improvement, special projects and people engagement. At the moment, for example, we're looking at a project to protect and curate our family archives. I attend all of the senior team meetings and the board meetings, and together with my brother Joe and Chairman Jeremy Bowler, we form a sort of communication bridge with the rest of the family while working with Bob and the senior team. I'll hand over to Joe. Nick.
Thank you. My role, I suppose, is twofold. One as a member of the sixth generation, and the other as offering film and media support. And in terms of the sixth generation, there are a number of us, and our ages range right from about 7 or 8 to 30. So part of my role as that is listening and learning from those who are involved in the day-to-day running. But we also have had various work experience at the company over the years. We're part of the social occasions and conversations around future decisions. And then with the film and media support, I kind of help out part-time when I can with storytelling, helping to communicate who we are as a company, primarily through images and audio, but looking at other ways as well. So, yeah, thanks.
That's great, thank you. And just to say, it really is a privilege to have all three of you with us today. And I'd like to pass on our congratulations again to you and your wider team on the 3 awards that you won. It was very well deserved. And one point that came through clearly in your application was how important your culture is, and that this really feeds into your strategy on an ongoing basis. There was really a clear sense of commitment to that long term, with a focus on your customers, employees, your supply chain and your local community. So Heather, if I could come to you first, how have you concentrated on building a sustainable business, particularly in recent times? And do you feel that being a family business has given you a competitive advantage in this regard?
Well, as a family company, we've always set out to safeguard all three, the reputation of the company, the family and our clients. And there are times when difficult decisions have to be made in order to keep the company going for the future. But we've always tried to look ahead and make these decisions in good time. We try and be adaptable. We try and make decisions quickly if necessary. For example, I don't think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, Bob, we sat in a meeting and we looked at the age demographic of our clockmakers and realised that within about 20 years, they were all going to fall off the cliff edge, and we were going to be left with nobody. I think I'm right, Bob. And
Absolutely,
we sat in that meeting and just during the meeting decided, right, we're setting up an apprenticeship programme. And we realised at the time it was going to be very expensive in money, but also in time, because you can't just turn a young person into a clockmaker in 5 minutes. And that has continued. I think are we on our 7th apprentice? I think we're...
Seventh or eighth, and looking. And that's something else as well. We haven't stopped, because it's something that we have to renew every year now.
Yeah. And another thing which Bob and I were involved in was, as the lockdown hadn't happened, but we were becoming increasingly concerned about both our customers, but also our own staff. And Bob and I had a phone call, and pretty much during that phone call, we sort of turned into, how's it all going, to actually, I think, Bob, we need to shut down, didn't we? And, and that was done in that quick phone call. And then Bob and the team managed to shut us down safely, looking after everybody in a matter of days. And that was actually a few days before the government made the decision. So I think it was a great move by Bob to get that organised for us. We try and run the business as efficiently as we can, a continual process. We try, we don't cut corners, and we don't want to sacrifice care for our customers. We continue to invest in training and technology, which is incredibly important. But another aspect, which I think can't be forgotten, is well-being of the staff, which is a really important aspect of how we run the company, and it always has. Present-day life for our staff can be complicated, and we try and be flexible on that front as well. I think we have a form, I don't know if you call it flexi time, but there's definitely a move to be helpful to people that work with us. Another factor is that we've always, as a family and generations, been aware of the need to keep back something for a rainy day, an incredibly difficult thing to do in business, but there's no doubt that this has helped the company survive when we've had challenging times. I think the customers like the fact that we're a family company. They know we've survived difficult economic times, and we're still here moving forward and developing while still caring for them.
It's obvious, Heather, from what you've discussed there, that values are really key to the sustainability of the business. And, you encompass that with not just the family, but all of the team. And that really comes through with the communication that you're obviously giving out externally and, within the business. I think it's fair to say that one thing that we often come up against with family businesses is that sometimes that legacy and concept of tradition can often get in the way of long-term growth plans, and that we can see that sometimes when the next generation starts to become more involved, there can be issues around what sustainability means and how to implement perhaps new strategies, particularly when it involves a large degree of change. Now, Alan, from your experience, how do you see family businesses focusing on sustainability?
I think it's interesting that I would probably say family businesses are at either end of the spectrum. Either it's incredibly important and they can already see, the next generations coming through, and that is paramount to their existence, or the opposite end of the spectrum, which is very much, well, I've been past this family business from the generation above me, and my role is actually to preserve and just keep it going, and perhaps struggle to think any further on from that. And I suppose coming from a family business myself, and I was the fourth and final, unfortunately, generation within the family business, I very much saw that myself. My father's role, he felt, was to preserve what had been passed to him, and we had to make some very, very difficult decisions, a bit like what's been said previously. So focusing on that long-term future is so prevalent. There's no way that probably the first to fifth generations of Smiths were really thinking about film and media support, whereas when Nick came on as the sixth generation, you're able to teach people that have been in the business for a much longer period of time than yourself the new ways of working, and hopefully, and I'm sure by the sounds of it, everybody was open to that sort of skill set that a younger generation can bring into the family business and have accepted it and benefited from it extensively.
You pick up on some really good points there, Alan, and actually having experienced it yourself, you can talk about it firsthand. What challenges do you see, particularly for family businesses, when there needs to be that change of strategy or direction?
it's an incredibly emotional thing to have to do. It's incredibly brave, I suppose, as well, to have taken a family business that we all know will have been, for large parts of your life, the only thing that was spoken about at home as well as in the office, to then raise the potential concept that we're not, perhaps there is a better way of doing it or a different way. And we need to move away from what our parents and our grandparents and potentially our great-grandparents have built for the current generation. It's probably one of the hardest things you could look to have to do in a family business, to be perfectly honest. And, having, I think, perhaps both family and non-family members involved in that sort of decision making, I think can be essential to ensure that you do critique and analyse all the different options and make a decision that is the right decision for the future, for the long-term future of the business, even if that means you become a very different business to perhaps what previous generations have been.
Heather, picking up on the point about change, one issue that we often come up against is family businesses perhaps not wanting to make a change or give up control of the day-to-day running of the business. And from what I understand, there's been various points throughout the history of your business when it has been built on a non-family member team, so that they've been in place to support and manage operations until the next generation was ready to take over. So what advice would you give to any family businesses that are maybe reticent about bringing in a non-family member on board in a leadership position? And what benefits do you think it's brought both to the business and your family?
I think if anybody came to me and asked whether or not bringing a non-family member on, I would say definitely be open to it. You do have to choose the individual very carefully, and that individual also will have to look within themselves to see whether they could work well with the family, because there's a whole load of different dynamics that come in a boardroom meeting that, there were days when Bob would have my 100-year-old granny sitting at the table asking very pertinent questions, but you have to be ready for that, and you have to be quite resilient, I think. But definitely with, if you get the individual involved, it can take time to work well together, but it can work really well. I mean, here's Bob, so, it can really work very well. As you've said, we've had a long history of non-family involvement. When my grandfather and his brothers, their father died when they were very young, yes, they had 2 long-serving employees who sort of looked after the business and trained them up until they were ready to take over. We've also had a previous MD before Bob, Peter Sully, who also did a great job. Throughout of all of this, I think it is a bit like a marriage in that, it can be difficult and you do come at it from different points of view. But as long as you keep talking, and, it can be really, really exciting. It can bring new energy, new ways of working, and a real fresh view on the company, which some of us might have lost. If, as you say, we're still talking about it over the cereal on a Sunday morning. We're not thinking maybe in different ways. We also have an external chairman called Jeremy Bowler, who's known the company for years, and he does a great job of acting as a sort of bridge, sounding board, whatever you like, between Bob and family. And sometimes, not that they've been, there are always slight challenges, but it's always been great to have Jeremy, so that either Bob can go to him and have a bit of a chat, or just we can do the same thing, and we managed to work well like that. So yes, I would say really do think about it. It can be great.
Picking up on that then, Bob, looking at it from the other side, what are your views on what you've been able to perhaps bring to the business, or maybe any challenges that you've found?
I think everyone's been on point today that, you have to be brave as a family business. You have to look at all the generations, all the contributions you can bring. I do remember Betty Smith, grandma around the table. She was one of the sharpest knives in the drawer. There are no egos around that table. You have to work as one team. And if you bring in somebody externally, of course, you're bringing in wider experience from different industries, different policies, procedures, skills in customer relationship management, marketing, whatever you've chosen as that employee coming on board. So they've got to have a mix, and you've got to be humble with it as well, because you've got to understand that 4th, 5th, 6th generation businesses live and breathe that business. The responsibility is enormous. We talk about family, and Heather and Alan and Natalie, you've used the word family today. And I think there is nothing greater and longer in the human, psyche as family, and therefore, as you run a family business, you treat every employee with respect, and you almost have to consider the customer as well, the client, the suppliers. If you view everybody the same way, you are generating this strength within that you can build on that and move from strength to strength and get through troubled times. Yes, we're profitable. We haven't always been. Yes, we've been through, as Betty Smith told me, some wars with, she must have been 2 or 3 wars. So, I'm sure the financial crisis and COVID was a walk in the park. But Nick Smith, who brought me on board, the brave side there was that I was the first MD that was not from within the company. So I was not a clockmaker. I was not an engineer. I'd been brought in more as a marketing, a sales, a relationship guy, because Nick wanted to get internationally. He wanted me to get on a plane and go where the cranes were still operating so that we could have a wider, safer, more broad pipeline of opportunity and breadth and depth of company. Those 13 years ago, Nick had hindsight. He saw things would develop, things could change, things could impact the company, and the company itself has continued to develop both its own staff, but also its relationships with the family develop. And we have candid conversations. We have things when the family disagreed, what we want to do. And I think that's important as well, that we can disagree. And we can both agree to disagree or stop something, change something. Those relationships can only build with strength over time. You can't have somebody come in for a couple of years, move on. So I think also looking at the strength of bringing people in, there's got to be this consistency. There's got to be a loyalty. There's got to be longevity, and there's got to be that consistency of what the family are looking for and what the employee coming in is looking for. I came from an environment, I've been at IBM for 20 years. That company looked at the stock price on a quarterly basis. It obviously told the market how it was doing. The operating team looked at it monthly, weekly, and if you're in the production side, daily on what was going out the door, what was being built. One of the reasons this company is 164 years young is that it looks at it. Yes, we report numbers on a quarterly basis. Of course we do. But the strategy looks at it on a yearly and a 5-yearly and even a decade basis. I would not be here today if the family had taken a view of looking at things less than 3 years.
I think picking up on a number of points that you mentioned there, actually, clearly business transformation is something that's been talked about a lot at the moment, Bob. And we don't know the full effect of what's gone on this year, but creating those strong relationships in the business, the family, the employees, the management team. Do you think that is a large contribution to help leading the business and being stewardships for the business to get that balance for the long term, but still being able to operate profitably?
Yeah, I think you used the word balance there. It's that balance. It's the balance of being able to run the operating side of the business, take decisions that I know I can take, that I know I don't have to ask about, that I know what the answer would be if I asked. Then you have to balance it with the points that the questions you have to take that are either pretty expensive or, if you get them wrong, very expensive. And of course, the family is integrated into the operating side of the business, where we're looking at sustainability, environmental investment, boilers, lighting systems, and so on. But when it comes to letting people go, recruitment, development of people, pats on the back, the odd realignment conversation, let's say, operating wise, you have to have the trust, ultimately the approval just to get on with it. You don't have the time to go around in circles.
I think that's a really fair point, and actually that reactive point that you mentioned. So one thing that we do see some businesses doing, which as a short-term measure, which perhaps is possibly a mistake for future-proofing it, is cutting back on staff training, delaying expansion in the short term for, that positive result right now, but without truly understanding what the impact on the business is longer term, and having that reactive mode. Moving over to you, Alan, what advice do you have for any family businesses who are struggling to see beyond the here and now and really can't see where the future lies?
It is hard to perhaps see past the end of this year, or this pandemic in particular at the moment, and undoubtedly having a forecast or a budget for the next year, a plan for the next 5 years, or in the case of Smiths, a plan for the next decade is fantastic, even if they have to be rewritten on an annual basis. But that investment in people in particular, I think is the most prevalent, and the strongest. And I'm sure if we spoke to all of the different generations of the Smiths of Derby business, they will all have different stories around how you've invested in people. And there'll be people undoubtedly in that business that have been there since they were young boys or girls and, grown up with the company. That said, it is incredibly difficult, particularly for family members, when they come to have to make decisions about perhaps cutting back on people, that there'll be people that they almost feel like as a part of the family, even though they don't share the same surname or blood. And in actual fact, we worked with a business not long ago whereby the MD, who is a family member, has had to let go a number of members of staff who he remembers walking into the yard and seeing when he was a little boy. He's then had to unfortunately end the role within the firm. An incredibly difficult thing to do, but the right thing, unfortunately, for the business and the long-term business, for him to be able to pass it on to future generations. But that investment in people, more so in a family business than anywhere else, I think is absolutely key. You'll see a loyalty in family businesses that I don't think you'll see in corporate businesses. I know Bob spent 20 years at IBM, and that, which is a fantastic stint, but I think you will see that type of experience and longevity and loyalty in family business more so than anywhere else. And that doesn't just create a job for life sort of attitude. It really improves the culture, the working environment, I think, to attract new people into organizations. But it's also a clear message that people are important, family is important, as from an ownership perspective, but then also people, and investing in those people from the training, the development, and improving their skill set, both technical skills and softer skills, is important to the family. And that's, incredibly rewarding, I think, if I was an employee in a family business.
Heather, investing in training, that's something the business has always been committed to, isn't it? Can you tell us a bit more about why the apprenticeship programme was so important to the development and growth of the business?
Our clockmakers are incredibly skilled people, as are the people that support them back at the workshop, the whole team. But the meeting that I was talking about earlier, we sat there and we realised that, if we're looking ahead at the company and the next generation, if these clockmakers finish and we haven't managed to train the new set of skills, no one else in the country was really doing it, and it's an industry we can't let that die. And so it was important on many different levels. But also, as the apprentices, I don't know if Bob will agree with this, as the apprentices started to come through, it had an effect on the other clockmakers as well. I think I kind of rejuvenated them a bit and made them interested again. And yes, the young bring in new skills. They're not frightened of the new technology. They'll show somebody else who might be more mature and not so used to it, how to do it. And also, I think it just made for a new energy again. And it's been really, really fantastic. And of course, it's been wonderful to share that with our clients and other customers. And I think they've enjoyed the story as well. So it's been really great. I mean, it does come with cost. It does come with time. I was in a couple of weeks ago and one of our chaps who's very knowledgeable was literally, we had a young clockmaker learning on the phone, trying to do stopper responses. And Tony was having to turn to him every 5 minutes to give him a bit of advice. But, that advice is going in and really, really important for the long term of the company. So, yes, it's been a fantastic move.
Yeah, we have the apprentices you can imagine there isn't something, off the shelf for a clockmaker apprentice. So we've had to work with third parties and training providers, and probably more than most businesses, we've had to look at it ourselves and say it isn't out there, so we've got to build our own training facility. So we've probably got what we think is the world's only turret clock training facility, which is purpose built here at the work. We have a buddying program that the guys not only go to college, not only go to our training room here that we purposely built, but they buddy up outside, as Heather said, with the older crew. And of course, that did breathe new life into them, because the guys have responded brilliantly and they want the younger lads with them. They get a kick out of passing on knowledge, on know-how. And with something that isn't black and white, clockmaking is a field that they have to buddy up. You cannot learn it in the training room alone, or in a workshop, or on a lathe. They've got to listen. They've got to watch what the clockmaker does, and they've got to learn from wearing the boots and up in the tower. So it's an incredible job, and one that, like Heather says, who else can do it? So we're very proud of that.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm sure that's how Tony learns as well, however many years ago.
Definitely.
Someone turning to him every 5 minutes thinking, I'll tell you how to do this and how to do this. So,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, it is clear that investment in training, in developing skills, in knowledge sharing, skill sharing, that's vital for the continued sustainability of the business. So looking at the longer term, let's move on to the thoughts of the next generation. And Nick, you're a member of the sixth generation, or G6, as I think you're more fondly referred to. I understand that you're bringing in a new dimension to the business now. So can you tell me more about the skills you think you and maybe other G6 members are bringing that will help the business kind of focus on sustainability?
Well, I've had the word responsibility kind of crop up time and time again. And there does feel, as a sixth generation member, as though there is some responsibility for what might come next. In terms of what we, as that generation, are offering, I suppose on a practical front, there are a few of us with our own careers, and that is something where we're able to bring in knowledge from where we are at in a number of different industries. And while we're not necessarily involved full time with the business, we are involved in lots of conversations, and we try and meet along to monthly meetings when we can, and ask questions and listen. And so what you have is young people, and I suppose you're talking under 30, and by their nature of being young, you are looking to the future. You're thinking kind of longer term to that. And so part of what we're able to offer is questions, but I suppose personally, I've been my background, or at least my current main career, is in media production and documentaries and how we can communicate stories. Yeah, lots and lots of companies, family companies, however big or small, are learning that to tell this story of who you are and how you've got to be where you are, and is important. And then combining that with the fact that photography, image, podcasts like this, these are wonderful avenues to connect and educate and cooperate with others. And so there are conversations, and I think there are a number of there are 7 or 8 of us of the young, in varying ages in our kind of 20s, and some have got some finance skills, and some have got some design skills, and some math skills, and a company is made up of many inputs.
Sounds like you've got a really good collection of new skills coming through the business as well. And I know when we talk about innovation, people often think just about technology. And actually, that it was interesting picking up on the points, and you mentioned it before, Alan, about media. And 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, who would have known that you'd be bringing media skills now to help the business think about innovation and future-proofing it? So I think it is really interesting to see that new skill set of G6, how they might change and pivot the business going forward, while still being aware of the fact it is still quite a traditional industry that you're operating in, and that, you know, you mentioned it, Heather, that you want to protect for the longer term. If you don't mind me asking, Nick, have you ever felt any pressure to move into the family business, or if you felt that it's a natural transition? And sorry to put you on the spot with, you know.
No. I think that is a relevant question, and you know, referencing what Alan was saying earlier about that, it can be really, you know, I imagine it can be a really difficult thing, particularly maybe in the early stages of generations, that first or second generation, where there aren't so many potential contributors. You know, you might be an only child, or there might be just a couple of siblings, and so I can't speak from that regard, and I don't know quite what it was like for my great grandfather and those when it has been, or even my grandfather actually, when he was faced with the responsibility of, you know, it was on his shoulders whether this was going, you know, was he going to commit to this company? When he had, in fact, you know, I think he'd had a strong plan to go and pursue an accountancy career in Canada, and he returned to the company, and so I'm becoming more and more appreciative of that move that he did, because he didn't just do it for himself, but he did it for those who are part of the company right across it. Have I felt pressure myself? I haven't. I think, and I've been given the freedom to, and we will all have to pursue our own careers and our own passions. And I'd say that's an advantage. But what is great about the setup we've got is that there is an opportunity to be involved, you know, to show interest, and so that's a fortunate position to be in, to have that kind of, to some degree, an opt-in, opt-out. But I must say that that I myself have found, I'm 28 now, but it's only maybe in the last 4 or 5 years that I've really come to gain a greater appreciation of the family company. And so maybe when you're 12, 13, and, you know, and it doesn't seem special because you've always just heard about it, and it's kind of, you pop into the works and you speak with others, and, you know, Grandpa talks about it with Granny, but I suppose, having worked for a few small companies myself in a separate regard, a couple of which have been family companies, I've seen some of the good things they've done well and some of the things they've not done so well, and that's given me it's given me an appreciation of what a great thing we've done. I think one great thing we've done, and it shows in hard times, is Bob and the senior management team and have been really great about communicating with the staff about what's going on, because often there can be maybe this mismatch between management and employee, and so you have to communicate them and say, this is what we're responding to, this is what we're planning for, and to have that kind of sense of community and conversation is really valuable.
I mean, going through hard times, nothing's probably been harder than 2020, but for most family businesses. From your perspective, probably more so Heather and Nick, you know, transitioning gradually from G5 to G6, do you think this year has perhaps given G6 a different perspective of where they might see the future of the business, or their role in it? Or, you know, Heather, do you think you're needing to kind of maybe have a bit more of a stewardship to help them think about the challenges that might lie ahead?
This may seem like a strange answer, but we haven't actually, although we've talked about their personal situations, immediate personal situations, I don't think there's been, and who knows, are we mad? There's not been a fear that the company won't make it. I mean, there's not been a discussion of us not moving forward. I think, you know, I think the family have got great faith in the senior team, and seeing how they had dealt with COVID, I've said the word, and I think we're on COVID number 12 newsletter, are we, Bob? I don't know.
13.
13, there you go. So there's been lots of information coming around. I think they feel, and they have friends who have worked for companies who there is just no communication, that they just left. That I feel that there's not maybe the fear or the anxiety about the future that there might have been. I think they are not probably looking forward too much on that point, really. But I've got great confidence that we're, you know, the senior team are really dealing with things well. So I don't think we've really had that conversation, but I'd be surprised if it's really, really worrying them.
And Nick, to you then, do you have any advice to offer to the to the next generation of other family businesses who are now thinking about entering the business and, responsibility that lies ahead? I know you're not fully in the business at the moment. You've still got another role, but you're obviously transitioning, and you mentioned that, being involved in the business for quite some years. Is there anything that maybe you wish you'd have spoken with your parents about at an earlier stage, or any other advice that you could give to that next generation?
What helps you make a decision about your own involvement, and you do, I'm not at this stage yet, but I'm envisaging it, is that if you are going to take some form of commitment and leadership to the family company, it needs to be found from it needs to be coming from your own strong desire to be a part of it. You do need to have an authentic desire and interest and longing for its success. And so you shouldn't beat yourself up over the head if you don't have that. I think to have that enthusiasm, okay, that's one thing, but how do you get that? You get that by, in part, sometimes doing a bit of work away from the family company. So I'm not advocating for people to leave family company, but if you're already working within it, then to gain some understanding of what it might be like to work for another company could be a good reference point. But also, if you're not, on the other side, if you're not working full-time within the family company, are you in some small sense learning a bit more about what is good about it? Are there some of those who've worked there for a while that you could talk to, maybe that aren't family members, that can give you a different perspective? Can you go out and speak to some of the customers that your family businesses serve? What do they think about, I don't know if you're in food, are people, if people are raving about the food you can offer, and you might not be fully aware of that, you haven't yet spoken to those who are sampling it, and so if there are ways that you can learn directly or indirectly about the positives of your company, that can help inform your own judgment. And don't rule it out too early as well. Just because you're not absolutely desperate to be there Monday to Friday right now doesn't mean that in 5 years' time you might not. So having a kind of openness, and if you are in a position to get others in to help you, if you don't feel like direct involvement, that's a great thing. But there are many challenges. I'm not trying to make this sound like it's an easy thing. And yeah, we're always working it out.
You got to get through the interview anyway.
That's true.
Thanks for sharing that, Nick. It's never easy when another member of the family's with you as well. Thank you. I'd like to say thank you again to you all. It has been really interesting to learn more about the business and actually the different dynamics, having the three of you here taking part in this. And, as the business does transition over to that sixth generation, you're all clearly very proud of the business and the heritage and the legacy, and quite rightly so. But you are very much focused on evolution and innovation, and that's really great to see, especially in such a traditionally kind of focused business. Where can people find out more about the business and the projects that you're working on? Because I did have a peek at some of them that you've been involved in recently.
Yeah, we've got a great website, Natalie. smithofderby.com, and we're pretty active on Twitter and so on. So please visit that website, have a good look around, and if any budding clockmakers or apprentices out there, sons, daughters of mums and dads, point them our way. We're always lovely to talk to everybody who may have a passion in horology.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. And we really look forward to seeing what comes next for the business. So thank you all again for joining us.
That brings the fourth episode of the Exploring Family Business podcast with Mazars to a close. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to the series and leave a review on iTunes. It will help us to extend our reach to the family business community so we can continue to share our knowledge and that of our guests. If you want to know more about anything that we've discussed today, or if you have any specific topics in mind that you would like us to cover in future episodes, I've detailed links in the show notes to our guests along with our contact details. Join us next week when we'll be interviewing Lou Frankland, Managing Director and co-owner of Mansfield Pollard, an award-winning manufacturing business based in Bradford. Lou took over the management and ownership of the business in February this year, along with her business partner, Brian Bentley, just 1 month before the UK went into lockdown. Lou will share with us her experience of buying a 150-year-old established family business
the challenges she has faced this year, and how her experience in previous businesses has helped her to focus on growth. I look forward to sharing more with you then, but for now, thank you for listening. This year, Financial Planning Week runs from the 5th to the 11th of October. This is a national initiative to raise awareness of the importance of financial planning. If you'd like to book a free initial consultation to review your personal finances, whether it's to discuss your retirement plans, savings and investments, optimising tax efficiency, or simply to get some peace of mind about your family's financial security, please email contact@mazars.co.uk.